All right, we're live, and I'm awesome. Really crazy week for me. So much going on, and I have a badass guest. But first, I want to take a minute. I want to thank everyone at kvar.com. I want to thank everyone at Arsenal. I appreciate everyone. Remember to go check out kvar.com and purchase some freedom. I appreciate everyone, but we have a special guest today. This is going to be a lot of fun. This dude is badass. He hunts, he does everything, he pounds some weights, he's into everything that I feel a dude should be into on some level, because he just does dude shit. I got the one and only Brandon Lilly. What's going on?
Hey, what's up,
buddy?
man? Not much, man. Thanks for having me. And I think you probably nailed exactly what I'm trying to do in life. I'm just trying to be the best version of myself as a man in a society that's kind of made that difficult and challenging to navigate. And I think for me, the easiest way to navigate that was just to self-isolate. Kind of withdraw myself, start training by myself at home. I have a really awesome setup here from Sorinex, who I also work for, and really figure out who the hell I am, because I'm raising a son, got an awesome family, got an awesome group of people around me. But I've been a high achiever. I've made, significant money at times in my life, and all of those things are fleeting. I needed to get back to a place where it was kind of square one with me. And it's just really been an awesome journey to self-understanding, I guess is the best way I can put it. But most of those things incorporate back into the dude shit, the man stuff. And, it's been fun. It's really been fun, and it's introduced me to people. We're probably talking because of some of those endeavors, so I'm really grateful for it, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Isn't it awesome sometimes to just be like Rocky in the barn? And that's what I tell people. They're like, what are you up to? I go, I'm just Rocky in the barn, dude. Just grinding it out. And that's like the answer I give like the homies. I'm just like, dude, I'm Rocky in the barn right now and just working. And isn't it just awesome to go into that solitude and you kind of find yourself, or you find pieces of yourself?
Oh, well, the thing for me, first and foremost, the craziest, I guess, change of direction is everything that I'm doing now that I love, I was doing at 12 years old and I loved it. And, like at 15, 18, 21, 25, you get these stair-step success points in your life, where you're getting ready to drive, you're getting ready to graduate high school, you're getting ready to graduate college, you're probably getting ready to start a family at those points. And they all just kind of ebb and flow away from all the things that you used to love, and you start doing these things that you feel like are expected of you and somewhat that you're supposed to do. And I put that in quotes. And I just found myself constantly like feeling like I was in a shirt that was too small. You know what I mean? I just felt very, very tied to expectations of others that didn't really lead to fulfillment. Even my powerlifting career, which is probably what I'm best known for, really very successful at that sport. One of the top contenders in my weight classes and my divisions when I was competing. And really, it was never the fact that I absolutely loved the sport. It was just that I was very good at the sport, and I was appreciated for my ability within the sport. I kind of found some other avenues that were more my style, which is the coaching side of things.
Right.
Which, I really care about people. I want to help people because I've been a person that needed help. And I say that really from trying to figure out some of these dark waters that life can present, whether that be drugs, alcohol, or, success at some level. I've battled all of those things. And really it was because I was trying to be someone other than the true self. So when I wanted to get away from all of that, really kind of understand how to get going in the right direction again, after some injuries, I had a pretty terrible injury in 2014. That subsequently led to 18 knee surgeries. And ultimately, it didn't retire me from the sport. I mean, I was able to still come back at a very, very high level, probably exceeded the expectations of a lot of people, and certainly exceeded the expectations of my doctors. But it just wasn't healthy any longer. I mean, anything at the pinnacle of sport, while it can look and seem like the epitome of health, it's anything but. And I was just not a healthy person inside or out. I had toxic relationships, toxic self-image. I mean, it was all really, really negative. And that's when I met Bert Soren. And kind of around that time when I was really struggling is when he and I got to know each other better. We had worked together a little bit prior, but he owned Sorinex exercise equipment, and they had done some work with me. I'd spoken at some of their events, but really I didn't want to be tied to that athletic status anymore. I didn't want to be a sponsored athlete. I didn't want to be, depending upon, hey, you've got to get in shape or you've got to get stronger to get back again. It's like I knew I had value, and thank God Bert believed in that and gave me a job. He actually made me an employee, so I felt like I had value again beyond just what I could do with the barbell. And that allowed me to start developing the Sorinex community, which is where I go out and I find people that kind of fit our mold and bring them in, and we kind of integrate within them. And it opened a lot of doors to me to be able to utilize skill sets that I have, which is like my mom always said, you never shut up. So I kind of became pretty good at talking and utilizing friendships and relationships, but that was all for work. And on the physical level and on the emotional level, I think I went all over the board. I mean, I was, just trying to figure out what felt good, what made me happy, and what was going to keep me going, the next 30, 40 years, hopefully. And it was all outside. It was all getting outside and hiking and camping and hunting. And, I removed myself from the barbell as a trainer. I started using kettlebells. I started using body weight. And all of these things just kind of brought me back, like I said, to the exact same stuff that I was doing at 12 years old, just at a man's version. And dude, it's been an awesome 6 years since that event. But I know for a fact, without that injury, without falling down, we would have been having a totally different conversation right now. I think you would have heard me telling you how great I am and how awesome I am and how powerful I am, totally ignorant to the fact that I'm fragile, breakable, and I'm not eternal. I have a death point at someday out there, and that's really what I'm trying to live for. Live the best life that I can, be a good man to my friends and family, and being a good employee for Sorinex, being an ambassador for them. And my life is pretty full, just trying to maintain those ends.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? How some shit opens your eyes. And I had a pec tear back when I was competing powerlifting locally, winning some stuff. I just had a body built for a bench press. I have T-Rex arms, and I was doing 500-pound bench presses, but I didn't know what I was doing. You know what I'm saying, Brennan?
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was doing everything wrong. I wasn't hydrated. Everything I did was wrong, and I had that injury. And it was one of those things, like you said, I went and saw my old athletic trainer from college, and he was like, you got to chill with this. You have to find another outlet, because you're not going to be able, you're going to compete and you're going to do well, but you're not going to be able to do this at the highest of high levels. You'll be good, but the injuries that it's going to cause you aren't going to allow you to do other things. I had jujitsu, other things came along. And I still wanted to be able to, I couldn't lift my arm above my frickin' ears. It was, you know what I mean? You just get so big and clunky. Yeah. And It was an eye-opening thing for me. But you touched on a lot of things there. One of them being Bert, and I don't want to turn this into a Bert commercial. I love you, Bert. But, he's built out something really fun and unique with Sorinex, which allows you to stem into so much cool shit,
Yeah. Well, the thing about Sorinex, and I'll kind of give people the rundown, the professional side of Sorinex is where we do high-level installations, whether it be for collegiate teams all across the NCAA and FCS, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, MLS. We are literally in the markets and in the segments of divisions within those markets at the highest level. I mean, just to name a few, we have the Lakers, we have the Cowboys, we have the Yankees, we have the Red Sox. I mean, these are not just entry-level teams. These are the best of the best. They require the best of the best, and that's why they call on us, and we fulfill that role. But the whole thing that I really emphasize to people, and I say this every chance that I get, I believe through my own experience and through the experience of others that I've shared, Sorinex, they kind of get your attention with the exercise equipment. A lot of the guys that I'm talking about are high-level athletes, high-level special forces. They've been very, very successful in other fields, and they're looking for ways to navigate back to human. They're looking for ways to understand themselves, life after the barbell, life after the NBA, life after special forces. And it's a very devastating road. I mean, it's one of the causes that I work with very closely is veterans. I work with the Riton Sniper Foundation and the Special Forces Foundation. And you're looking at men and women who were trained to be the elite, trained to be the best of the best, to go over and have the most stimulating, and I'm talking stress level stimulating, experience, which is hand-to-hand combat, face-to-face combat. And then they are expected to come home and transition to this life where they work a 9 to 5. They raise a perfect little family. They have dinner on the table every night at 6 p.m. And it's just a very, very hard transition. And I can understand in my own ways, from being ranked number 1, number 2 at the time of my injury, to waking up the next morning with 2 straight legs that were casted and not knowing who the hell I was without being strong and big. You know, and there was a really, really difficult time. I mean, over the next 2 years post injury, I rode that roller coaster of depression, of loss, of drug use, all of those things, and, you know, really atypical behaviors prior to my injury. But I think so many times in this life, we get very, very static about what we judge, you know, like, oh, Brandon, he's falling apart. He's this, he's that, he's suicidal, he's depressed, whatever it may be, whatever you want to call it. And understand that there's life on the other side of that spectrum, whatever it is, good or bad. There's a day after this one and the next one and the next one. And so, yeah, while I looked like a train wreck for probably a good 2 to 3 years, on the other side of that, I kind of circled back, found myself, found a job that I love and am excited about, surrounded myself with people that I love and am excited about. So I've learned through my own struggles to not judge so quickly on others. You know, see if I can be that helping hand, see if I can be that voice or that person that can help someone through their trials. And for me, I had so many people like Bert, and then like Brady and Rudy and a lot of my friends within the Sorinex community. And what you find out about these people is, aside from their gift, aside from their sport or their special forces operations, they have unique desires and interests as well. You know, Rudy is doing stuff with the Force Blue Foundation that he founded, regrowing coral reefs. Brady is an avid hunter. Bert is an avid hunter. My friend Nate, he's a mountain climber and a skier and an outdoorsman. So all of my friends that have gone through some of these transitional changes and healings, I call it, they help me believe, okay, it's okay if you just want to be whatever you want. Like, you have the pen, write your own story. And I started back. I mean, I actually wrote this in a journal to myself shortly after my injury. But I recognized that the happiest time in my life was when I was 12 years old. So I tried to go back and do the things, like I said, when I was young. Started with some pickup basketball, which wasn't very good on bad days. But then I started hiking. I bought trekking poles. I bought a new camping set. Like, just reinvested in all those things and had the support group around me that would be there to, you know, if I had questions or if I had doubts or whatever, they were there. And that's been the best thing in the world.
You know, it's, you know, you hit on so much, and it's really good stuff. It's crazy, right? When you're an alpha, right? Like most of us are, or try to be, or portray ourselves to be, whatever you want to call it. And really, we're all just like little kids inside. You kind of look at the world as you mature, and I feel two big, I always say this, Brendan, you can control 2 things in life: your loyalty and what time you get out of bed. Everything else will change. You can't, everything else around you can't control, but you can control those 2 things. And then I always tell people, as you get older, the biggest thing you learn is it's not a sign of weakness to be a bridge builder, to build bridges. The biggest thing I tell people, I was talking to Ray Cashcare about this, and I was speaking at a deal, and I said, because I speak a lot about networking, I have a very good network that's pretty known. I talk a lot about building bridges, and I always tell people I can't surround myself with bridge burners. People who burn bridges end up on an island, and it gets lonely on that island. And I try to tell people all the time, when you mature and you grow older and you become, like I always tell Jay Cutler or a lot of these people, and Donnie and I talk about this, and different folks, you know, it's amazing how they can smile and shake hands with people and treat them a certain way, and you have to be a bridge builder. And then you touched on something right there that was really important. You said not forming an opinion of people till you form your own. That is a huge sign of maturity.
Well, here's the thing. I can tell you that I wouldn't say my whole life, but I would say a majority of my adult life, you know, I started being recognized as an athlete very, very early. You know, I was always good at the sports, but like 15, 16, there started to be some recognition that I was different, that I was capable as an athlete, potentially going to play beyond the high school level at the collegiate level. And I think for whatever reason, whether it was just my need or my feeling of inadequacy in other areas that led to this. But I started to get some of that privilege. I started to build some of that ego very early on that because I was good at this, I mattered more than X. And I became very, very, I guess selfish is the exact word, but trying to give you more than just one word of what I was. But even with my training partners, I would utilize them until I felt like they were no longer beneficial and move on. I was just this meat grinder of consumption,
Wow.
whether it was just more in every direction, more money, a bigger house, a faster car, a bigger truck, whatever I could do. It was just this desire for more and more and more and more and more, to the point that I would push people over. I would, step on throats. I was just systematically, like, everything that I did in the gym was put your head against the wall and just push through. That's the way my relationships were too. I would squeeze as much as I could possibly squeeze and get as much juice out of that as I could. And if you weren't good to me anymore, or you weren't useful to me anymore, I moved on. And literally in the last probably 2 or 3 years, I've had to make a few phone calls that were pretty difficult on my end, because, once you kind of break that glass house of perfection where you think you're the shit, where you think your shit doesn't stink, at least for me, I was able to look back and very honestly dissect failures in relationships, points where I was just completely out of line, and I started making apologies. And, as recently, I don't want to put it on here like I'm some hero, but every person that I've reached out to has been willing to hear my side, willing to at least hear me out, which speaks to the character of these people. Now granted, this isn't like, you make a mistake today and 2 weeks later you just call them out and just whatever. I mean, I'm talking years have passed in some of these situations. So time does heal a lot of wounds. Time gives perspective. And I think people that have been in those situations where it was interpersonal relationships or business relationships that have gone south, they've at least heard and maybe hopefully seen, okay, for an extended period of time, Brandon has presented this other person. Maybe I can meet him in the middle and have this conversation. And without fail, every single time, yes, there were hard points in those conversations, but every single time I left that phone call or that meeting or that cup of coffee feeling relief, feeling less weight in my life. Because when you're guilty, and I knew I was guilty of being wrong here. I'm not saying everybody is guilty at all times, but I knew that at least in part, in all of my failures, I had a hand in it. So I never went into those conversations looking for apology or looking for answers. I was ready to give an apology, and I was ready to explain myself in the context of the time. Now, I was able to then compare and say, here's how I would have done things differently. Not saying that we need to, but definitely, if I can do anything for you in the future, let me know. I'll make good on the past. And that's where I leave it. And I can tell you without any fail, almost 100% of the time, and like I said, there's some too current to have come full circle, but I've had good working relationships with most every single person that I've kind of rectified the situation with, whether it be, hey, I'll share an article for you, or hey, here's a client that I think would be good for you. I tried to be as helpful to that person without going over the top and without it being fake. Like, if I knew somebody could work with you as a client, why would I not make that phone call? Why would I not show, hey, I really am trying to help you out here. I'm trying to do better for everybody, because I know if I send this one to you, somewhere down the line, I'll get one back. And dude, the more that I have given, the more that I have gotten. And it is infectious in every direction.
It's so true, and everything you're saying is absolutely spot on. And I hope people that listen to this realize they're getting a free seminar right now. And I try to explain to folks when they're trying to build networks and relationships and suppress their ego and grow in life, you have to give before you receive. And you have to be willing to give before you receive. And that's very hard. And if you watch a little bit even of my past, and I know we both followed each other from afar and chatted from time to time, I walk on the shoulders of giants. That's what I tell people all the time. Everybody I surround myself with, I feel is, something more, or they've built something more. But it's only because maybe it's my Italian upbringing. I give till it hurts. Like, somebody calls me and they say, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? I'm like, yeah, sure. What do you need? Let me make a call. And that's what I try to surround myself with, is people that we work together. We're stronger together. And it's a together mantra instead of a me, or I mantra. And that's very hard to get folks to understand, especially the ones like you touched on with the giant egos, that it becomes a me mentality. Now, those people still find success, right? But they find success at a cost. And what you're touching on is some of that cost, right?
For sure, man. Listen, I think that there is a definite advantage, especially if you were just talking about statistically, there's an advantage to the grind. And I'm putting that in hashtags, or in quotations, where you get up at 4:30 and you drink your water and you journal and you do all this and you push and you push and you push and you outwork everybody. Well, okay, that works for a while. And I guarantee you that every successful person has had to do those on particular days and for extended periods of time at times. That cannot be the baseline for success day in and day out. It just cannot be. That is too imbalanced for what we are and what we're designed and capable of doing. I think that's why you see this high suicide rate in very, very successful people, because they're literally pushing as hard as they can. They have no idea how to push more, how to get more juice from the squeeze. So they just feel like they're the failure. And it's a catastrophic way to live in the mindset of, I can do anything that I put my mind to, I just can't do it all. And then it just eventually erodes and breaks you down, because that's who I was. I can only speak at one city per day. You know what I mean? Or maybe close proximity, get two a day. I can't answer all the questions for all the people and all the seminars that want to have me on that particular day. I can only do one at a time. And I think too many people keep resorting to different means and different ways to reach more people, which really dilutes down what you're trying to say. And instead of trying to pump in the purest message, the purest essence of who you are into every single thing that you do. And when you can't do that, start retracting back from what you're giving to. Because at some level, it's only going to come back and bite you in the ass. You're only as good as who you are today. You can't disperse that over 1,000 different things, or you have to have really good delegation skills. And I can tell you what goes hand in hand with ego. You can't delegate. You think that nobody can do it better than you. Why are you going to give those things away? So really what I had to do was concentrate. I had to stop doing seminars. I had to stop doing the volume coaching. I had to stop doing a lot of the things that were bringing me security and safety from an income standpoint, go way, way backwards from year to year on what I made money-wise. But what also allowed me to do? It allowed me to stop spending money chasing that dollar. I was spending $1 to make $1.25, right? Well, what if I can spend 50 cents and make $1.15? Work a little bit smarter. Don't give yourself to so many ends, and really invest in the things that you believe in. And guess what? Your product and your worth start to go up, because people see this is quality. This is not quantity. This is quality. And there's only so much that I can buy of his quality time or get of his quality time. So people started giving me full spectrum approaches to everything that we would do as far as relationships, business relationships, partnerships, whether it was for Sorinex, whether it was for my personal businesses. But I got better by doing less. I got better by doing better over less. And I think that's a message that for some reason just gets lost in the fray of go, 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 get up at 4 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, I'm really good at going to bed or getting up at 4 o'clock. You know what I suck at? Going to bed by 10, so that getting up at 4 o'clock makes somewhat sense. I was the guy that was trying to adhere to that. And I was saying, hey, I'm disciplined. Look at me, 4:30, 4:30, 4:30. But I was going to bed at 12:30, 1:30. Eventually that was burning me out. So what do I do now? I modified that to make sense. I go to bed around 10, 10:30. I get up around 6:30 or 7. I don't miss much. I feel awesome when I wake up. I still get the things done that I need to get done, and it works for me. I think too many people are trying to be like other people instead of looking at other people and saying, what can I deduce from this person? What can I utilize from their lessons? And then building their own platform, building their own process to success, rather than trying to copy and paste everyone else's. I think for me, the further, like you said, I'm going to my Rocky cave. Mm-hmm. I'm going back here to be myself. Yeah, I'm going back here to find out all this information that I have. Like I can wow you with quotations from other people. What the fuck am I going to say? What do I have to say that's worth a damn? So it's all encompassing. The more people that I can bring into my life that have value, and the only desire is to help them, they give and give and give to me, and it has helped me so much. It has given me so many avenues of growth and perspective that I never would have been able to do on my own. The self-made stuff, that's cool and all, and I respect the guys that truly do it, because there are a few. It's an old cliche at this point for me in my life. Like, yeah, you can have your self-made, but how much better would life be if you did it with some help, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the theory being you're always stronger together than you are apart. And, you know, I prescribe to the theory of, you know, surround yourself with SMEs, as many SMEs as you can. You know, when I got into the shooting business, it was by happenstance when I started working, you know, and traveling around and being on ranges. And I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to be around a lot of people that became somebody's, right, later on.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people all the time. You know, when I started hanging with a lot of these people, the Dom Rassos, the Tony Sentmanats, the Ray Cashcares, all these different folks on ranges, JJ Rakaza, they really weren't where they are now. And that's what I try to tell people. And for every one of them, there was 10 that didn't make it. But I would travel around and be on ranges and be around them. And I would just sit back and I would listen, because I was, you know, staying in my lane, trying to not to be a shithead, and just kind of like paying attention and just hearing them. And I was going around just being the guy who just kind of paid attention and just listened to a lot of them. And I found holes in the business, and I was doing a lot of this at a time when everything was starting to come of age, you know, there was social media, different things, and it's changed so much now, you know, and now you can't get away with just the photo or just this. It's evolving. Even in fitness, it's evolving. We're seeing, you know, shows like the Mr. Olympia show fail because they can't seem to figure out they're trying to fund a magazine, and they're trying to make it about saving a magazine, and that's dying. And we're seeing platforms like video and audio take over, and streaming. And these are drums you and I have been banging for a long time, being a forward thinker, being progressive, understanding where media is going, and trying to explain to brands and companies, you have to skate where the puck's going. One of the things Sorinex does and you do is you combine a lot of these things that I'm passionate about. And I've been saying for years, in the beginning, people wanted to cut my throat for saying fitness and firearms and defense and hunting all walked hand in hand. People were like, you're crazy. I'm like, it's just another action sport. That's all it is.
Right. Well, here's the thing. You know, I look at all of our connections, and like I said, you know, guys that are kind of wound a little tight, guys that thrive on that. And I say guys, and I mean that in general for men, women,
guys
whoever.
And gals, yeah.
But it's just, I say guys. So, but what I'm looking at when I look at the Sorinex, you know, at Summer Strong, and you're looking over 12 to 1,500 people at our flagship event, you understand that room is filled with high achievers. Now, not every person is going to get out here and go hunt and kill an animal, but I guarantee you within the processes of learning to shoot a traditional bow, which we had those foam clays that we were shooting, and many people that had never shot a bow in their life were picking that up and having fun with that. Well, Corson has teamed with us for high precision rimfire 22s and 17s. We're doing Riton Optics. I mean, we're getting all of the information, stripping it down into an easy to digest format, which is, you know, if you're talking pistols, there's no easier pistol to shoot than a 22. There's no more comfortable pistol to shoot at a 22 level than a Will Corson. I believe that. And then the 22 rimfire rifles, the 17 WMR rifles, as far as Will Corson. And then we have Riton Optics, as well as guys that served in the military and sniper courses, giving instruction on these things. So it is high achievers getting high level information on high performing components. And then they're turning around and it's like, yeah, that is a recipe for awesome. And guess what? Many of those people leave Sorinex and they take that into, I'm going to buy a pistol for myself. I'm going to do a 3-gun course. I'm going to go out here and learn to shoot a compound bow. I'm going to go on my first hunt. That is a reoccurring storyline that I see within the Sorinex community, because others are blazing that path. Like Bert was definitely a huge reason in my reinvestment back into my bow, my reinvestment back into hunting. And he showed me a different way to do it than what I'd always done. You know, I'd always been told, you just drive around, you find a spot, you see a deer, you pull over to the side of the road, step out, aim your rifle and shoot it. That's fine. And that was quick meat acquisition. But it was like, what if you could do this for a deeper reason? What if you were going to expose this to your family who's never really been into game meat? What if that forces you to learn to cook this food the best way possible? And that went further into, well, what if you made a knife with someone? So then when you harvested the animal, You could collect the meat and then cut with the same knife the meat here at your table. That goes one step further. What about your cutting board? Could you make a cutting board? Absolutely. All of these things down to the table that we eat on is made from someone here in my family. You know, like, it's gone full circle for me now. It's not just going out here and hunting, catching, you know, the biggest antlers. I know that when I take an animal, it is going to be served and respected over and over and over again. And that just satisfies so many things about my life that were missing before, because there was no respect in my life. I commanded respect and gave none. You know, so now it's like I give respect to the animal. I respect my family by feeding this animal. All of my endeavors go towards that, like the lift, run, shoot. I want to be capable with my bow. I want to be capable physically so that I can succeed on my hunt. The hunting was really probably the one thing, when I break it down like this, that transcended who I was and helped me find out who I am. It gave my training purpose. It gave my shooting purpose. It gave my cooking purpose. It gave me purpose. You know, and as wild and as obtuse as that sounds for many, many people, I think, like you said, that is a growing vein within this society where people are tired of just being able to come home and check out and, you know, Netflix and chill. I think that's a nice reward from time to time, but I think people are at, you know, system overload. They don't want any more of that. They want quiet. They want green. They want space. And I think that's why you're seeing this trend towards that. Plus, you have guys like yourself. You have Joe Rogan, Cam Haines, John Dudley. I mean, you can go right down the list of people who are very, very interesting, doing very, very cool things. And it all comes back to the same pursuit of hunting. Now, I know tons of guys like that can hunt, but they choose not to for different reasons, or they're just busy in other outdoor endeavors. But the outdoors, it just seems like such a natural solution to so many of our problems. I mean, obviously, the world that we live in has far surpassed our evolutionary state. I think that we are still being called back to the hunting, to the outdoors, to the wild, because we're far closer to that than we are Netflix. Even though we have a command and control of Netflix, I don't think our body and our minds are ready for it.
And I think, no, you're absolutely right. And I think we're marching towards an interesting media blend where you look at what, like, you know, brands like Monster, Red Bull, and what they've been able to do through streaming and how their channels are situated, where it's not about the product. And one of the things I love about Sorinex and what you do is it's not about slamming the product down people's throat. It's trying to get a message through to people. It's the story. It's the blending of the lifestyle and all the things that Bert has done building out, like you brought up Summer Strong. And one of the things selfishly with Summer Strong, I've said it to Bert, I think in passing, you know, it's almost like it's at the point where it's so big, you have to have so many different media outlets there to support it because you have so many cool SMEs, right? How do you get the message out, you know? And that's one of the struggles all the time. Like I said to someone the other day, I was at an event, I'll say what event, I was at Safari Club International, and the marketing director standing with me, and we're just talking, and the number 2 guy, the whole thing is there, the government relations guy, and I said, why don't you guys stream this? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you have the president's son, the president speaking here. You have all these people. Why aren't you streaming this? And they just looked at each other like, why aren't we? And it's like, you know, it's at that point where I think brands need to start to think like, why don't we have a channel that we're just putting all this out there? Why are we doing it even in clips? Why don't we just have a full channel? Why are we limiting ourselves?
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there. I mean, it's like anything, man. You know, if you cook for one person, that's obviously intimate and beautiful and powerful. When you cook for 10, that can still be awesome and beautiful and powerful, but you cannot give attention to 10 preparations that you can to one. And I think that's kind of the crossroads that we're at with Sorinex is, like you said, it's the best of worlds, where an event that we've grown and created and kind of manifested into something really special, it's starting to be at that tipping point of like, is what we're getting from this, is what we're giving from this sustainable if we keep growing the number of bodies in the room? Yeah. And then I think that lends itself to the extension that you're talking about. And it has to grow, but it has to be unconventional growth.
And I said it to a brand. They said, well, how do we do it? And I said, it's really simple. I said, the first year or two, you might have to bring in a lot of outside people, subcontractors, to just gather media, whether it's podcasts as guest hosts, whether it's all these different things to get the rights, right, to video and everything else. But you have to get all the content, and you're going to need 3, 4, 5 people there. You're going to need Cam maybe interviewing a few people on the hunting side, maybe a John Bartolo, maybe whoever else, and you bring all these people together and you could have something really cool and homogenous. And then over time, you can build it out to where I would say to Bert, I'd be like, Bert, you need Sorinex Media Company or Sorinex Entertainment Group. Like, that's where you are. Like, you need to do that. And those are things I know you're already exploring, and a lot of brands are exploring, because you have to have it. It's just at that point, it's at the tipping point to where just doing a seminar isn't enough. Because if you're streaming it and you're charging $25 for it or $10 for it, people will pay, people will watch, people want to take in that information.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a way to do it. And I think, it might be cool. And this is just me kind of rapping off the top of my head, but if there was a way to incentivize, specific coaches, even beforehand for Summer Strong, you go to the polls online and you say, who do you want to hear from? And then if people can't make it, they can buy, the full day package of the stream, or they can pay some sort of lesser fee per coach or something like that. I mean, there are definite avenues to make it viable for everyone. And then I think it can also retain, more of that honest integrity to what it really is trying to be. And if you were to ask me, what is Summer Strong? I certainly think it is a showcase of our equipment, because it's at HQ. You get to see the latest and the greatest of everything that we have. But again, I go back. Sorinex is a people company by proxy of exercise equipment. Every single thing that you will hear from that person when they leave Summer Strong or even a Winter Strong, you will never hear them say, man, I am so glad I came for that, that piece of equipment over here, and I did just a really great workout on that. Yes, that will be part of their story, but the majority of their story is, man, the people that I met, the stories that I heard, the feelings that I felt.
It's an amazing collection of individuals. Amazing.
It really is. And I don't know how to quantify it to a level of people. I mean, we bring new people in, and that's the hardest conversation. I mean, what is Sorinex? Well, we're an exercise equipment. Okay. That encompasses tons of companies that do nothing close to what we do as far as the human element. And it's fine. I'll tell everybody that's listening, and I say this without fail, we are not for everyone as a company. We are not for everyone as a exercise equipment either. And that's because there are other companies that can fill those holes. I mean, everybody can have their piece of the pie. We just tend to do things at our pace, at our level of expectancy, and our level of delivery. And I think that is what continues to bring people back. I hear over and over and over, the customer aftercare is unbelievable. And I mean, I'm not on that side of things. I hear those conversations, but it is a credit to the staff that Bert has built and collected around him. But really, if you go back to what Sorinex is, I mean, this is a man in Richard Soren that believed in a vision from the time he was 10 and 11 years old. He was building exercise equipment for himself in his garage by his father's permission at 10 and 11 years old. Some of the stuff that is cutting edge by today's standards in metalworks, he was building in wood. And he advanced that. He grew the business to himself, by himself, selling his home, selling and pawning anything that he could to finance these jobs. And the University of Kentucky gave him an opportunity. They gave him an impossible deadline, to the point that the people that were helping him were literally falling down in fatigue trying to get this done by the time that it was supposed to be at the ribbon cutting ceremony. And this man carried ton after ton after ton of steel, dumbbells, equipment across this field in a wheelbarrow, literally willed himself to get the job done. And Sorinex stands because of that commitment. From day one, before it was even a thing, Sorinex exercise equipment was the vision of Richard Soren. And I think, to Bert's credit, Richard was the builder of the metal, and Bert is the builder of the people. Those two things are just an unbelievable compliment, because the equipment is, if you've ever been around Richard Soren for more than 5 minutes, he'll look at your shirt and tell you how to tuck it in better.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's not an asshole. He just looks at things in a very unique way, in a very engineering type fashion. He wants to look at everything he can and say, is this the best that we can do that? And I got to see that firsthand on a product. I don't want to speak on it because we don't want to meddle in that. But this guy, he had a particular piece of equipment that you can wear, and it was kind of a support system. And it was shortcutting some other. You were getting one piece of equipment for three others, And just some of the questions that Pops asked, it was so foreign to me, the way that I was thinking about this thing. And literally, I think the guy left with a better idea of how to build this thing better. So now, instead of just covering 2 or 3 other pieces of equipment, now he's covering 5 or 6 just by 4 or 5 questions that Pops asked. Yeah. So he has that creative mind. And then Bert has the ability to just draw people in. Like, Bert is the nucleus of everything.
I think the path, because I'm all about pathing, I think the path is similar to, like, whether it's Apple TV or anything else. In year 1, with the entry of an email address, you get as much as you guys stream, as much as you guys put out there in audio free, absolutely free. And you start to build a streaming network off of it, where it's the Summer Strong, and you get all the snippets, all the clips, everything, and it's all available on the website where everybody can watch it for free with their email address and contact information.
Yeah, that's pretty. I mean, you have to talk to Bert on that one, though. That sounds. I think the sky is the limit for this thing.
And where he would hit a wall would be how to gather it all, which is where, like I said, in the first 2 years, he'd have to probably have somebody like Cam. He's got Ryan there, Mickler. He's got a bunch of people there. You'd have to almost like subcontract them to help gather all the media, the interviews, everything, and then he has exclusive rights to all those. But just putting it all out there, and then I think the path will continue to present itself to where it could lead to a streaming network. Sorinex streaming.
And I think it's really cool now. I mean, we have some unique partnerships going where, it's, I don't want to speak too much on this because I don't know the ins and outs of every situation, but, when it doesn't have to be an exchange of money, it doesn't have to be an exchange of any currency other than just commitment to one another. Like, hey, we'll get behind you on this event. We'll get behind you and support you. We'll talk about it on our social media outlets. We'll get our influencers to talk about it. And then you guys do it vice versa. And it's really starting to pay off because, one, the partnerships we're forging are
stronger.
They're real and they're organic and they're happening naturally. And these are people that I want to sit down and break bread with. But also it's like, oh, we've got an event in 2 weeks. I'm going to be there because I want to support you. And it just lends itself to this very organic flow that doesn't feel like business at all. It just feels like working and managing relationships, which has been it's been a very healthy alternative for me as well as everyone.
It's like me with the show, and I know Joe's the same. Like, I won't pay anyone to be on the show. I mean, I might help out with a plane ticket here and there, or somebody needs a room, but that's right. The kind of stuff like even like with the Summer Strong, you work with people like, hey, we can do a plane ticket, we get a block of rooms. Like, you just work with guys, and guys will work with you. That's the same. People come to me all the time, and they're like, would you do this? Would you do that? I'm like, get me a plane ticket. Like, I'll be in the next thing smoking. Like, let's figure it out when I get there. I'm not one to sit down and dial it in. Now, the question always comes down to, especially when you get into stuff like this, is who gets the exclusives or who gets what, and you just work together on that. Hey, we can do this, and this makes sense, and all sides win.
I think I think you're going to see. I mean, another business that is just crushing it right now, Black Rifle Coffee. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they have the greatest coffee in the world. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they have the worst coffee in the world. But what they are doing is bringing a coffee that people can drink and enjoy to the masses, and they're making it cool to drink Black Rifle coffee. And I just think they've done a really good job of utilizing their friendships, utilizing their business opportunities in a way that's like, hey, if we would hang with these people, we're going to do business with these people. And it just seems to work out really, really well. And that's been one that I've really enjoyed following. And I've got kind of some inside looks at that through Crispy. Crispy's been really, really cool to me over the past few years. And we went on a hunt in December down in Oklahoma. And, just getting to hear him talk about, like, the way that I'm excited about Sorinex is the way that he's excited about Black Rifle. And every guy that I've talked to, whether it be Mike Clancy or Evan or Dan or anybody over there, they all have the same excitement, just like the same people at Sorinex. So it's very natural to fall in line and support companies that are just excited doing cool things. I mean, they won a freaking NASCAR race the other day. I mean, how much cooler does it get than that,
To this day, I've not had a cup of it.
Yeah.
As close as Crispy and I are, to this day, I've never had a cup of it. Is that crazy?
No, but I think it's something that you touched on too. It's like, I don't have to be about somebody's product to be about that person. You know what I mean? Like, more and more, I think for a long time that was, I got to distance myself because you're a competitor of a product that I like. No, you're products are competitors. That doesn't mean that we have to be competitors, or it doesn't mean that you two business owners are competitors.
Right.
Like I can be friends with everybody. It just means at the end of the day, this is the coffee that I'm going to drink, or this is the CBD oil that I'm going to use, or whatever. But I just think people have really started to get wise. The ones that are successful at it have started to get wise. Like you said, we don't have to be enemies. We can all rise up a little bit each, and I think that's the way I'm trying to go about life, is give as much as I can to everyone around me and absorb as much as I can and talk half as much, although I've done nothing but talk on this show.
No, hey, listen, you're killing it. This is about you. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I love some of those guys. I mean, my relationships with some of those guys run really deep, especially, Crispy, Tony. There's so many great dudes just affiliated with the brand. And I know, it's just so cool to have such awesome brands around you and just kind of absorb all that knowledge, just take it in for what it is and just kind of sit around. Some of the best moments are never captured. And one of the reasons I started the podcast was that reason, because I said, like, kind of like you said earlier, like, we're both kind of blabbermouths, right? So we both just like to get on the mic and just kind of, like, one of the reasons I did the Supercast with John Lovell and Mike from Last Line of Defense and Tony at Shot Show is I said, we all sit around and shoot the shit. Let's just record it this time. Let's all just get together for an hour and record it.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool opportunity. And I mean, you can usually tell, like, the first 5 or 10 minutes, everybody's aware of the microphones, but it's after that, and I think even Rogan has mentioned, it's after the first 45 minutes people settle down. And I just think it's such an honest look from the outside looking in. And I wanted to share something with you while I was thinking about it, speaking of Rogan. So I was at an event, and I think that I just talked about this on another podcast too. I think there's an overwhelming consensus that if you're a middle-aged guy from, let's say, 27 to 50, you have some desire to meet Rogan or be on his podcast or whatever. Like, I think that is a shared interest within the world today. But I was thinking also about that. What if Joe Rogan, and I'm just using him as an example, got in the way? So, for example, I was at deer camp with Bert, Matt Pell, Jessica Byers, and a few others, and we were having literally one of the greatest conversations. I mean, there was great food. It had been a hard day. We were all just sitting around talking, and I was like, well, if a Joe Rogan walked through the door at this point, the whole dynamic would be lost. What would he add to that situation? And there's a point where I'm going with this. I think so many times we look at, and this is probably something you can understand as a networker, somebody who is good at connecting people. When you have that target, you kind of just lose focus on everything else. And it's like, I just need to get in front of this person so I can talk to them and help them out and do this, that, and the other. Well, had Rogan walked into that conversation, I can tell you most every person would have left that conversation that they were currently in and walked over and talked to him. Or had he joined us, the conversation kind of loses its momentum and people are like, well, I'm going to bed. Okay. Yeah, I got to go call the wife, or I got to go do this or whatever. So it's like, I have really tried to appreciate the moments for what they are, not for who's not there, not for who could be there or what might be added if somebody showed up. Like, really try to get as much from those conversations as you can while you have them. Because I don't want to say names, but I was sitting at a dinner with a guy from Big Chino. I was sitting with two guys from Black Rifle Coffee, and we're having dinner. And it's like, if all I was focused on was thinking, okay, Evan Hafer has to come in here for this to be a valuable conversation, I would have missed one of the best dinners / best conversations I've ever had in my life. You know what I mean? So as someone who's out there looking for these network holes and trying to connect people and put the dots together, I have learned to shut my mouth, diminish expectations, and embrace what's in front of you, because you never know what that person is going to say that's going to open 10 doors for you. You know what I mean? It just, over and over and over in my life, I felt like disappointment because I didn't get to the person that I wanted to talk to, or I didn't make the connection at this event that I thought I would. And instead of going home empty-handed, it's like, no, you better go home and utilize what you do get, and as soon as that started to happen, it was like everything just fell back in line. Right. And everything started to flow again, because I'm not forcing anything. I'm just going with what happens and making other things happen from those, not trying to continually make things happen and falling short.
So typically, what you're touching on is something I call, and what's kind of called at times, it's the displacement of energy in a room, or displacement of energy. It's the Lazarus effect. So when someone or something gets introduced to a situation, it creates like a particle transfer in an energy transfer. So that tends to happen. So let me, because there's kind of two questions in there. I don't get starstruck. So I was blessed and cursed with the fact that, I think you know this from seeing a lot of the people I've had on the show, everything else. I think the most starstruck I was in some ways, just because he's an Italian American, was getting to rap with Rudy Giuliani. And
right.
There's something
Congrats,
there.
by the way. That's pretty massive. I mean, he is at the epicenter of the news media world in 2020. You know,
Sure.
I mean, it's awesome that you get that opportunity.
And you know, I've texted and talked with him, and finally getting him on the show. And, you know, that's just something in my upbringing, you know, whether it was Mayor Menino in Boston or Rudy Giuliani, you know, being an Italian American, that was a big deal to us. You know, in many ways, we looked at him a certain way as a leader. And, you know, for me, I would say, not being a starstruck person, I have the ability to just kind of have conversations with people, and I'm not like, whoa, look who it, like, I've never been a fanboy. You know, I'm respectful, I'm honest. And you know this, being in the position you're in when you're hiring people or working with folks, you almost tend to not hire fanboys. You know what I mean? Like, you're kind of like, you know what I'm saying, right? Like,
I do. I get it.
You're always sniffing that out. So you can't have fanboys, right? So I'm always very kind of laid back. I prescribe to the theory, and I'm working on a deck on this for a presentation I have to give. I do a bunch of speaking engagements, so I don't want to get into too much of the soup. But the real thing to understand, I touched on this earlier, is you have to give before you receive, right? So when you're trying to build critical relationships, you have to give before you receive. There has to be intimate moments. You know, everybody that I want to reach or touch or have a relationship with, like when I walk around shows, I go around and I get my touches with people. I always say, you know, it has to be an intimate moment that you share between the two of them. And it's a strategic introduction. I'm not out there to just collect cards. People who do that are fools. I'm persistent as hell. I follow up and then follow up again, you know, and that's something Don Jr. and I were talking about, you know, the persistency of following up. I always try to understand what the person I'm networking with, their passion is, what they love. And when I'm deepening my network pool, I kind of use an us mentality, you know.
Right.
It's not about you. And I think through podcasting and through some of these things, you try to give other people the stage. It's like, give them their moment, and they're going to walk away and feel good that they got their point across. And that's what everybody's trying to do, right? And then, you know, kind of lastly, you always have that opportunity to find common ground. If you don't find common ground, you're never going to have a relationship. Now, to answer your question about being in that large setting when the Lazarus comes into the room, or there's that particle transferal, or there's that shift in energy, yes, it's always difficult when something like that is introduced. And I tend to not network as well in a large group. It's kind of like this, okay? So everybody remembers the movie Al Pacino and it's Glengarry Glen Ross, right? The guy sits in a corner all night with one guy, you know, a stranger. He's not even in the book of leads that they were getting, and he sells him a piece of real estate because he forms that intimate relationship. He's buying him drinks, he's hanging out with him, he's spending the whole night with him. It's a long form relationship build. Now, what I tend to do is I'll find somebody that I have common ground with, that I legitimately want to rap with. And if there's that opportunity to kind of spend some time chatting with them, take you and I today, this is a conversation we would have even if the recorder wasn't on. We would just kind of be, you know, talking. And it's kind of like I brought up Austin Legg earlier, who's a good mutual friend of ours. We do the same thing. Austin and I would go back and forth and we'll talk about things, and we kind of find that common ground. And Austin will tell you, you know, I've never asked him for a free Eberly stock product. I bought 2 of them, I think. I don't even know where they are, but I bought 2 of them. I use them. I like his product. I respect it. And I respect what he does over there. And I just legitimately respect the things that he's doing. And it's nice to talk to someone on the outside about those things. And cultivating these strong relationships has to be done almost in an intimate setting. If you're not going to get that intimate gallery, you're almost never going to have that moment. And it's hard when, like you're saying, there's those forces introduced into the situation that, like you said, may otherwise pull from the situation. Now, Rogan is probably the Barbara Walters of our time. You know, I think he took, I think he took what Howard Stern was doing, refined it, cleaned it, put it in a setting where it could thrive, and doing those long form interviews, which aren't anything new. Howard was doing them before him. So hats off to Howard. Those long form interviews, Howard Stern, those long form interviews are something I give him all the credit in the world for, because I don't go 3 hours. I go about an hour and 10 minutes, because I like to make something consumable for the audience that I have. It doesn't say I couldn't get there over time, but I think what Joe's appeal is, what Joe did, I think the most impressive thing Joe did was he came in at a time when the MMA really needed him. The UFC really needed him, because he humanized something that was so brutal. And I think what he did was, as the UFC was struggling to be allowed to fight in various cities and in various areas, as he had more fighters on, which was the bedrock of his guest list in the beginning, he humanized a lot of them. And a lot of people started to say, these guys aren't so bad. This is really cool. These are really open and honest people. And when I started this podcast, I wanted to do the same thing for the defense industry, to a larger extent for the action sports shooting industry, the hunting industry. And I wanted to humanize the voices behind the images that we see, because I think in the gun industry and defense industry, we're way too photo and, oh, here I am and I'm shooting fast and here I am killing a deer. We're way too caught up in, like, we're going to be savages and we're real, that when I get somebody like a Brendan Lilly talking about the passion he finds in the hunt and in the camaraderie, it starts to open people's eyes to you being a normal person that just enjoys these outlets.
Oh yeah, dude, I think that's 100% accurate. And I think, you know, as you touched on Rogan really kind of bringing MMA to the masses and humanizing it, I think that's his strong point in so many areas, you know, whether it be hunting. You know, he's done a really good job. It seems like you've kind of gotten onto his formula, where whatever he's interested in, he consumes information through his guests. And I think that's just a mutual shared experience that he has now. He's developed that trust from his listeners. And whether it be drugs in the form of medicine, the hunting world, the MMA world, his, you know, sensory deprivation tanks, all of those things, I think they've had a heavy influence on the fact that at some level, I believe his podcast is helping men especially navigate this life at a level of, like, what do we do with this mess? You know, and I certainly credit him, as well as, you know, like I said, Bert and those guys. It was a yin and yang. Like there was definitely ebb and flow. Like I would hear about this on the podcast, and I would talk about this with Bert, or I would hear about it with Bert, and then 2 weeks later, somebody on the podcast is talking about it. So it was kind of like my life was definitely navigated, or helped to be navigated, towards a lot of this positive stuff, just because I'm looking to guys who are a little bit older than me, that are a little bit further down the road than me, that have probably felt and experienced some of the same stuff and the same turmoil I'm in. They've just gotten to the other side of the creek. You know, they know how to get across these waters, and it really helped me. But I think without the injury, I would have never, ever been open or really respondent to a lot of the information, because I had the same kind of surrounding going up. You know, I trained at Westside. I had Louis right there. I trained at Lexington. I had Chuck and those guys right there. But when I'm 26, 27, 28, 29 years old, you know, I'm trying to carve out my legacy. I'm trying to carve out who I am and what I can do. And a lot of times that came at the expense of the information of others, just kind of catapulting. Is exactly the same thing that you said. I stand on the shoulders of giants, but I was trying to crush the giant beneath me rather than using him to stand further. You know, and I think that was all age dependent, ego driven, last kind of clutchings before injury. And the injury really kind of, in the moment, it was devastating, but it really set me free from that way of thinking.
You know, it's funny.
Because I needed people. You know, at that point, when you think you don't need anybody, when you're broken, I mean, to the point you can't shower, you can't bathe, you can't wipe your own ass, like, you need people. And what I found was the people that I needed were not or anywhere to be found, and I was relying on strangers for those things, you know, and that's a very helpless feeling. So on the heels of that, repaired relationship with my parents, repaired relationship with the rest of my family, my friends. I had self-isolated. I'd gone Rocky to the barn as far as you could possibly go, but in the wrong direction. You know, I thought my barn was the Coliseum, rather than realizing that I was just self-isolating to my own detriment. Now I do it to gain the best perspective of myself. I'm not sitting there telling myself I'm the best in the world. I'm sitting there saying, you have everything to gain, everything to learn. Start here, So that's kind of how I start my day every morning, is just that little kick in the ego's balls, and remind myself that I'm very small and very insignificant, but the impact and the change that I can then give to others, that can be significant in their life at that moment.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack there. There's so much. It's one of these things where when when I reflected a little on doing this show with you, and I tried it for the night before, whether it's for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, think about the guest, and you're one of the few that I looked across the aisle, and we have very similar, if you want to call it, backgrounds in a sense. We both loved powerlifting. We both played sports. I was a football player, my whole life. And, only for having gone to the academy and things like that kind of led me down this path of working in the defense industry. But it's very similar. You and I surround ourselves with a lot of great people, and we don't necessarily look at ourselves as great, right? But you've carved out a really cool niche for yourself, and you're one of those people that from afar, I'm always like, geez, I love how Brendan's doing it, and I really dig that, or that's really cool. And I think you kind of form a little bit of a humility guideline, before you interview someone or before you spend time listening to them. It's always easier sometimes when it's somebody totally outside the sphere, but when they're in your sphere, of friends, influence, and everything else, you reflect a little bit more, and you're kind of like, geez, I really do respect how he's doing things. And I thought that was so cool last night when I was just thinking about that, and you just touched on it a little bit. It's interesting how the world spins, right?
Yeah, man. I appreciate that. And I can tell you, like, if it wasn't for just some really, really like heartbreaking conversations that I've had with people that, told me how I made them feel, told me the truth of the things that I said and how they impacted them. When I was on top of powerlifting, and I even say that now, I almost kind of like I sigh at that because it's so insignificant now. Like the achievements that I had, while they were important, and they proved that I could do things, and they proved that I could follow a system and succeed. It was just so destructive at so many levels for me. I know guys that do it, and they do it well, and they maintain their family, they maintain their balance, and more power to them. I was just not capable. It was like balls to the wall, all or nothing. I thought there was some kind of shrine if you died early for the sport.
Right.
Like I looked up to guys like Matt Dimmel and the stories that Louis would talk about, guys just pushing themselves so they couldn't go anymore. I wanted to be one of those guys. I wanted to be respected for having the heart. And really and truly, what I started to understand was all I was really looking for was validation from the outside. I was seeking validation from Louis. I was seeking validation from a Chuck Vogelpohl or my training partners. Really never saying, Brandon, are you happy with what you're doing? Are you proud of what you're doing? Are you really even enjoying what you're doing? And now, like, I kind of come back to those points. I continued down that path because I was being respected for it. I was being applauded for being good at a sport. I was being received as being someone who disseminated information. So if you listen now, I try not to make myself the expert. I even made a video yesterday about pull-ups, and I didn't post it because it's like, I don't want to come across as this guy who has it all figured out. I'm just trying to get better at pull-ups. I'm talking about some of the things that I think about when I do them. So I'm going to reshoot the video from the angle of, here are things that help me get better at pull-ups, not here's how to get better at pull-ups, because I find myself just really being cautious of self-labeling myself as more than I am, because I think there's a lot of that going on in social media. I know that I have definitely kind of snuck into those cracks before where it was like, okay, what does this really mean when you say this? Or what does this really qualify you as when you say you're an expert or you say you're a coach or whatever? I look at people that I call a coach. I call myself a trainer. There are coaches out there that are just like unbelievable depths of knowledge. So yeah, if people call me a coach, I don't really correct them, but I just try to consider myself a trainer of myself and sharing philosophy with other people that are interested. I'm not trying to tell you what to do or how to do it. I'm more in line with, well, here's what I do. Take from that what you will. Because that's very much my philosophy with other people too. I don't want anyone to be offended if they give me a system and I'm not doing it step by step.
Right.
Anytime that I take someone else's process and look at it, I have to ask, does this make sense? Like if somebody's like, go to bed at 1 a.m., get up at 4:30 a.m., well, I can already tell you that's not going to work for me. Like I know that. So why would I tell that person, hey, I'm going to stick to this? So up front, it's like Terrence Mitchell. He and I were talking. He's an amazing dude, by the way. And he's probably 2 or 3 steps ahead on his personal journey and fitness journey. And I asked him about his program, and he sent it to me in full. He said, just use what you like, take what you need, and, come back around to what you don't right now. Because it'll all be useful in its own time. And I've just tried to present myself more in that approach, because then I don't have to combat questions of, well, you said this. And it's like, I did say that, but I said it was for me. I said it was working for me. It's anecdotal. And I just got tired of fighting online, dude. I just got tired of the fighting everybody. Like, why do you all care what I deadlift or how I hold my arms before I deadlift or this, that, and the other? I just got tired of defending it, so I defend it beforehand. Like if somebody says, well, what makes you the expert? Where did I say I was an expert? I just said I'm doing what's working for me. So I just try to be mindful of those things and be respectful of others when I'm gathering their information. And it just seems to create an honest conversation that leads to more breakthroughs. Terrence and I talk almost every day or at least a few times a week, and he'll share something that he's kind of working on, and I can share my reply to it. And ultimately we both improve. We're both critically thinking without guilt or ego, and those things that's a pretty cool space for me to be in right now. Well,
we could go on forever, but believe it or not, it's been an hour and 10 minutes. So
doesn't feel like it.
I know. It's been amazing. Let everybody know where they can find. I got to get you to Vegas. Got to shoot some AKs over here at Arsenal. Got to get you.
I would love to.
Yeah,
I would love to. The truth of the matter is, because of that, I'm really just trying to streamline to my Instagram right now. I have a website that is being revamped. Everything I do is either Brandon Lilly 3, which is either, there's 3 of us Lilly boys. So Brandon Lilly 3, there's, that's my Instagram, my Facebook, my Spotify, all of those things fall under that. My email is brandonlilly3@yahoo. If anybody wants to send a personal message, and the website will be brandonlilly.net once it's revised. It is not current. So hit me up on Instagram. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm active. I answer just about every message that I get. I mean, I try. So I just try to be clear. I answer my comments and everything. So don't have anything to hide from.
Well, brother, I appreciate you taking the time. I honestly do. Oh. It's been amazing.
Well, thank you very much. I feel like I had my cup of coffee and an espresso, so I feel like I was on the ramble bus, but I'm glad we did this, man. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you. And I want to thank everyone here. I want to thank everyone at cavehour.com. Don't forget to head over to cavehour.com and purchase some freedom. I want to thank everybody who took a moment to listen, share, comment, leave reviews. Reviews are the tough thing, right? Getting reviews on iTunes. iTunes reviews, if anyone can, leave a damn review. It's like the hardest thing to ask for. But I appreciate you taking the time, man. It's been amazing.
Oh, anything I can do for you, let me know, man.
Of course. We're out.
All right.